superintendent's and performance president. At this time, please join me for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the national flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Now we'll have the invocation by Trustee Paris.
Please join me in prayer. Father, as we go into this board meeting, please watch over the board and watch over all of our administrators and guests. As we deliberate tough decisions and look at the future of our district, please keep our district in mind, and please watch over our students and staff. We have a student who recently passed away from an unfortunate issue, so please watch over their family and watch over their loved ones. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. All right, everybody can be seated. We'll get right into it. We'll go to public comments. Checking.
Yeah.
Is anybody registered for public comments? No? All right. Let the record show there are no public comments, so we'll move on to item 6, budget planning workshop. That's my call.
So good evening, board and visitors. I hope, board, you got an opportunity to see some of the new items that we have displayed throughout the ad building. We're working really hard in trying to continue to beautify our ad building with pictures of our children in action and doing things. And so I hope that you will enjoy some of the things. And of course, I hope you've had an opportunity to say hello to Tuffy. A special thank you to Dr. Brown, Dr. Bromley, and our entire administrative team and teachers and students for working so diligently to spruce up our district for the HEB visit next week. To be named an HEB finalist for the District of the Year is a very big deal, and we're very grateful for that. We're honored, and we're excited about it. And we are proud of our students, teachers, and the entire district for placing Porte ISD on the map in such a positive way. Tonight we will hold, as already has been said, a budget workshop to discuss future plans for our school district. And tonight's goal is to have a discussion and to continue exploring ways we can move forward given the times we face. Our guest presenter tonight, along with our Chief Financial Officer, is Mr. Doug Witt, Senior Managing Director at Samco Capital Markets, Inc. He will also share, after following Dr. Bromley, some information tonight to help educate the board on our plans to consider selling another series of bonds to complete some important work in our district over the summer months when students and teachers are not in the buildings. For those of you that drive around our district, you can already see many of the things that are happening with the bond money that was just voted on by the voters in May of 2023, and we're certainly thankful to our voters and community for that. But with that tonight, we'll hear from, again, Dr. Bromley, we'll hear from Stacy, our Chief Financial Officer, and we will also hear from Mr. Doug Witt. So without further ado, Dr. Bromley, take it away.
Good evening, guys. Yes, really it's set up to Mr. Wynn, who will go dig deeper into our finances and kind of explain where we are as it relates to selling our second installment of the bond 2023. You should have this packet in front of you. If you remember, this was put in front of you many moons ago. This was kind of the outline when we were building out the bond and how we would go out and selling the bond. More importantly, how we would maintain that tax rate that we promised and we continue to promise as we move through this bond. But as you look at it, the overall goal was to have 3 installments. The first one, which we've already had, August of 2023, was that first one. Roughly, we had 80 here. It went for 84, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And then in 2024 of August, 70 million. 2025, you have the last remaining 70 million. On top of that, you've got Proposition B. That was our one-to-one initiative. Over its lifetime, it will get 15 million, but we were not doing that every year. It was every other. So we had our first sale in August of 23. We will not come back to that again until August of 2025. I say that to say, this was the outline, and it continues to be, but Doug, working closely with Stacy, Dr. Jackson, and Doug, our financial advisor, we're always looking at what is the market telling us, is there a good opportunity to possibly sell early? Do we get more benefits from that? And as we sit here tonight, obviously that's what we're proposing, and then Doug will spend some time telling you why that could be a benefit to us, or will be a benefit to us as a district. But let's talk about the first installment and what it looks like overarching, and then what it looks like internally and how we kind of distributed that, and how we kind of outlined what it looks like. So we knew construction was at the forefront. The district did an unbelievable job of pre-planning and getting the architect early to get design ready, so the day we were blessed with the passing of the bond, we could start immediately putting boots on the ground and getting going. So when we allotted this money, you're going to see a lot of it immediately went into construction. And what happens is, when you have to put that much in construction, your other pockets didn't have that much funding out of the gate. And I'll talk about that in a second. But $84 million was the first initial allotment of August of 23. In Prop A, there was $25 million allotted. Prop B, $3 million. That was the one-to-one initiative. And then Prop C, $56 million. All of the stadium was funded in the first installment. If you break down Proposition A out of that first sale, you can see Bulldog Development Center, there was $15 million allocated for that first funding, that first installment, which covered about 45% of the total cost of the actual facility. Transportation, $1.2 million, that was one sale of our buses, or not one sale, one purchase of our bus cycle. We didn't sell them. And we're still waiting on those. But 1.2 there, and then maintenance and operations. Now that covers more than just chillers and boilers. That's our operating costs as an entire district from a maintenance stance. Our campus projects and upgrades, $2 million, and then integrated technology. What was big in this was our teacher laptops, our staffing components, our technology edge, our monitors, projectors, and all of those items. So we came out of the gate in Proposition A with that in that first allotment. We had our first sale in Proposition B, $3 million, so that was a one-to-one. That's our student side, right? So that's to get all K through 12 with new laptops and so on and so forth. And then Proposition C, we funded fully the Bulldog Stadium construction at $56 million. So when you break all that down, that gets you to your $84 million in the first installment. So we'll talk about where we are. It was a charge to me from Dr. Jackson to hit the ground running. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to ensure the day that we were blessed by this community to say, go and do the things you said you were going to do. We wanted to get things in place so people could see it and they could put their hands on it and so forth. So you can see we've taken off running very quickly, and this is kind of where we stand. There is a little bit of a lag. It's a little bit more spent, but this is very close to where we are. So Bulldog Development Center is about 50% expenditure with a total of $15 million, as I kind of showed that last slide. Transportation, we've already exhausted this. We've ordered those buses. It's all encumbered. Integrated technology, so about 78% out of that $3 million that's been used. Campus projects, this is where we're really needing to look at for the next installment, especially for the summer months. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But about 1.3, that's your playgrounds. That's all the things that we've been doing across the entire district. And then M&O, there's some chiller purchases in here, as well as some other items that we put on the ground. So as you can see, we've really pushed the envelope, selling very quickly to get things done and get things moving. This will taper off. We will not be spending like this every year, but we wanted to get these things done as fast as possible to kind of get the ball rolling. And remember, these allotments are over a 10-year period. So you may see 2.4 million, but when you add that up, it's really 23 million over a 10-year period. So there's plenty of money there, is what I'm getting at. So why are we here in front of you tonight? And Doug's going to spend more time on the details of this, but we feel like we're at a very good point to sell our second installment or move it up into a May sale instead of waiting until August. One more important piece to that is, in the summer months, we know we have direct access to our campuses. One thing that we struggled with when we sold the bond is we didn't get the funding fully until August. Well, school was in session. So we were really trying to find ways to get things done really in July. We had some campuses painted. But then when August hit, we kind of had to stop. And everything was exterior driven. Right. We really want to be able to get into some campuses throughout the district this summer and getting some painting done and some other things, but we can't have kids there to do those items. If we can't get this done, then that really kicks us back for a whole other year. And we know we are facing escalation in everything that we do. Painting now is very different than painting in 2025 as far as costs and so forth. But what this will do and what we're proposing is moving the 24th of August up to May 2024. Doug will spend time explaining why that is important and why it's a huge benefit to the district as far as interest rates and so on and so forth. But as we look at it, we've got two driving factors. Obviously the campus sides. We've got playgrounds that we still got to complete. Those are still a part of the money cycle. That's not even in there yet because we're going throughout the district to do that. Painting, much like Jenny Reed, we're putting a bid out for painting. That's happening as we speak. It should be posting in a week. And then we'll be getting out to get all the campuses done. We're really pushing to get the painting, obviously, that stands out. We've got huge flooring projects at College Park, LaPorte Junior High, LaPorte High Schools, so some different areas. We can't get in there again when kids are there. So we'll be working through that. We've got a project at College Park at the library, and so on and so forth. Furniture, that will be another point of emphasis for us. Right now, Lomax Junior High really is the only campus that we put emphasis on furniture. They've had a complete replacement. In June, every piece of furniture will be removed and taken away at Lomax, and we'll be putting all brand new items into that facility. But that's not the only campus that needs it. Not all campuses need a full replacement, but we do need some turnover there, so we'll be looking at doing that. But the next big piece for us will be the stages across the district, specifically the elementary, and then we'll move into the high school at the theater and what that looks like. But these are big deals, these are big money items, but these are things that really need to be done, and sound system's not included, but that's what the upgrade part is. Additionally, we got construction projects. Just like you made the decision, even before my tenure, to engage with an architect to get things ready so you could get moving as soon as the bond passed. Every minute that we wait on Lomax Junior High and LaPorte High School, it costs us money. So we're really trying to look at this, but as soon as we engage in the movement of design, they charge us. And there's fees, there's pre-construction items that we have to start making accounts for that will start to play a role in that first installment. So obviously that's another need. And then lastly, and I'm going to put this in front of you in April, by no later than May, is our chiller and boiler replacement. So we're building that out as we speak. These are huge ticket items. The cheapest one that we've got that we're looking at right now is $752,000. And then we've got some upwards of $900,000 to $1 million. And you don't get them, much like
It takes
all
you a year and a half to get them.
for a long time. So this is a big deal, and we've got some at some campuses that are really in need, and we're just they're at the end of their life, so we're trying to get them in front of you so we can get that added to our system as we go. Any questions before I pass this over to Mr. Witt?
How are you guys, like, so, if I read that right, $3 million for all campus projects upgrades for a 10-year period. How are you gonna do that with only $3 million?
10 million.
What is it now, I'm sorry?
Campus projects, the first sale is 2, and it's a total of 10 million over 10 years.
Well, it says 1.3 million on that campus project at 65%.
Of the 2 million. We've spent that so far, out of that first
This
amount,
first
the 2
cycle,
million.
of this first
Oh,
cycle.
the 5 cycle,
Yeah.
sorry, okay.
Yeah, I was just showing you where we are.
Where we are
So
right now.
we spent 50% of the first
Of this
installment
first
of
installment.
each account. Sorry, that's kind of confusing.
So does that mean that, like, on that one in particular, so you multiply that by 5 also?
There's a total of $10 million allocated for campus projects across the entire line. I know that.
Or what about the Bulldog Center?
Bulldog Center in total cost is $29.5 million, I believe, total construction.
I'll give you all the numbers for confused on how that one's the same, but that one's gonna multiply by 5.
Based on the different
Because
sales.
it isn't on what it was originally voted for. Like, what was the original amount of that, of Prop A, B, or C, and where that came from? Does that make sense?
It does, I guess I'm just stuck with the total.
Yeah, I can show you and give you a document that
So
breaks that
like,
down
that was
completely.
the first sale of it. and that
Well,
was-
yes, my question, like, I have it, it's not $2 million, $3 million.
So 3.75 is an annual amount for M&O. So over the 10 years, it's $37.5 million. Does that make sense?
But the other ones are not.
Not all of them go with annual years, that's
That's
correct.
what it is.
Sorry, yeah.
that money.
I'll get that to you, Mr. Martin, and it'll show you exactly how that looks. Because, and typically, we first sell, so integrated technology over the life is 24 million. We just did the first sale to get things going. And we would have done more than just the first year, but again, we had to do more for the construction side, and we only had 84 to spend. So it's just kind of how to break that part. But I can provide all of y'all what that looks like. Any other questions for me before I pass over to Mr. Witt? All right, done.
All right, good evening. It's good to be back. I appreciate the opportunity. Feel free to stop me at any time with questions, but we'll have an action item at your next regular board meeting. Tonight, we're here to preview kind of the plan of finance that matches your ongoing construction and capital improvement plan. So I always start with kind of where our market is. This is called the Bond Buyers Index of Municipal Bonds. Y'all have seen it from me in the past. It's a national index. It's not a Texas school index, but it is a picture that tells the picture of where we are with interest rates. So it goes all the way back to January of 2001. The average runs across the middle at 4% in blue. That's the blue line at 4.02%. The high occurred in October of 2008, the precursor to the Great Recession and liquidity crisis. And the low occurred in August of 2020, pandemic level of subsidized interest rates, very low interest rates. They extended beyond August of 2020. We actually did a refinancing in 2021 where we refinanced a bulk of your bonds at much, much lower interest rates, and you'll see that momentarily. Where we are today is at 3.5%. That's about 50 basis points below our average. So despite the fact that you hear all the discussion about inflation and Federal Reserve action and when are they going to lower interest rates, they have control of the short-term interest rates called the Fed funds rate. These are medium to long-term bond rates. They function in a different way than the short-term rates, and we have a very sound market. Limited supply, there's not a whole lot of refinancings or refundings taking place. So every bond that comes to market is primarily new construction bonds, and we clearly have a lot of bonds in Texas that need to be issued for the construction of the growing population, but not all other states have that same issue. So our recent bond ratings, we've talked about this before, but you are a highly regarded credit quality of an institution. You have AA credits, AAA based upon the permanent school fund guarantee. This program is back in service. It took a brief period there where we didn't have enough capacity in it. We got the findings and the rules that we needed. So this is back functioning. We have the AA credit. This is mid-grade AA. This is mid-grade AA from two national rating services. These are independent credit analysts. And this is what they talk about. They talk about a large and growing tax base with moderate concentration, access to the Houston MSA. So you have a pretty diverse economic and employment base. You have strong wealth and income levels, and then you have, as an institution, strong reserves. Obviously, every 2 years we have a whole new set of challenges brought before us. But in Texas, we carry more reserve than other states. So the word strong reserve may not be what we would consider strong, but it is strong by national standards. Likewise, when we issue bonds, they talk about us having moderate debt levels. Well, it's moderate by national standards, but it's normal for Texas standards. So we carry bigger reserves in Texas, and we issue more bonds because that's how we fund facility and capital improvements. But all told, you continue to be a very creditworthy institution when it comes to issuing your bonds into the market, and investors read these reports from these institutions. So briefly, historical refunding and redemption results. Again, we did the 2021 at record low of $17.7 million of interest cost savings. That's huge by any standard. That leads directly to bond capacity and no additional tax rate requirement. We've periodically refunded bonds over the period of time, and then here recently we just paid them off early. In 2023, you did an early redemption and prepayment of principal. In 2024, you did another one as part of, and at the same time as selling and issuing additional bonds. So it's unusual that I can have a district that is issuing bonds that have been approved by voters and at the same time paying off early prior bonds that have been issued. So all told, over the past 10 years, you've got about $33 million of interest savings for these refundings and redemptions.
And Doug, if I may add to the, just to kudos to this district and the historical fact that this board and prior administrations have done a phenomenal job. Not only is that unusual, it's really unusual, highly unusual for a district this size to be able to pay off bonds and to refinance at the same time.
Exactly.
Bonds. Yeah.
Exactly. Your bond program, I know, I go to a lot of board meetings. I hear a lot of challenges about budget. You are gonna hear the same things, but your bond model is outperforming. Everything that we talked about pre-election, we are outperforming that today. Tax base, interest rate, et cetera, which means that we can accelerate payments. You have a mixture of assets that you're financing. We're paying off bonds consistent with those assets. Not all of these bonds are being used for long-term construction, and we're amortizing bonds early as well. So our reports on your bond program is we are outperforming everything that was done pre-election conservatively. So for example, I think in Dr. Bromley's schedule we put up there, there was an interest rate assumption. We were way below that in our first sale of bonds. We were 367. That number was 385, something like that. Four and change. So here we go. The review of the bond election parameters. Again, this is a duplication of Dr. Bromley's slide, but 164 million for Proposition A, 15 million for Proposition B, and 56 million for Proposition C. All of this one was issued. The small first portion of this was issued. And again, this is for technology, and we are paying these bonds off in a short-term manner. And then 164 million for Proposition A. 220 total for the facility improvement, 15 million what we're calling capital improvement, which really relates to this. And then no tax rate increase. So again, you want to talk about unusual. To be able to vote this amount of bonds and do it with no tax rate increase is pretty phenomenal as well. And then again, just reiterating, bonds amortized according to the type of asset being financed. I can't tell you how many times we've had a bond election and they want to know why we're doing 30-year bonds for 2-year technology, and the short answer is we're not. Taxable value history. There's a lot of data points on here. Obviously, when it comes to voted bonds, our taxable value for the interest and sinking fund tax rate is dedicated solely to the repayment of voted bonds is what's most important to us. And you can see here in 05-06, you were a $4.5 billion district, $5 billion district. Today, we're pushing up around $15 billion. This continues to grow, even though in our model, we have a small 1% growth of what we call baseline value. And we actually have built-in depreciation of your tax base for some of your 313 values, okay? And you'll see that momentarily. But this number grew again. It outpaced what we expected it to do. And it grew despite the fact that we had a homestead exemption increase. This number otherwise would be much, much bigger. But the substitution for that lost value to the homestead exemption comes in the form of hold harmless, which is also helping the bond model outperform where we were pre-election.
So Doug, do you anticipate it trending like it has, that it just will increase?
Yeah, so we build in kind of a flattening out. We have the baseline value, which is 1% growth, which is very modest over the next several years. And then we have a flattening and depreciation of the 313 agreements, even though we've never seen evidence that they do that. So they have these models when they make application, and y'all seen them, and they file a report with the comptroller's office, but they talk about depreciation, and we follow that because that's what they report. If you were 313s for, say, a solar farm or a wind farm, those really do depreciate. And I've seen those numbers in our more rural school districts that have those 313s. But we haven't seen much depreciation in your type of tax base that we have. So the short answer is we don't need a whole lot of growth in order to implement our bond program. Every time we do, it creates additional INS fund balance that we then put to use for early redemption or otherwise. So that's a look at our taxable value. Now, one of the key points When we have the kind of placeholder for when we would sell bonds, it's about once a year. We normally put in August, and the reason we put in August is because you get a certified value generally in July. By law, you're supposed to get it at the end of July. So I like to get the certified value so I know what I'm working with for 24, 25. In your district, I don't need it, okay? So we can sell bonds here in the spring before most of the districts enter the market in July and August, because I don't need to see any more of this because we're already outperforming where we were planning-wise. So your tax rate and fund balance history, here's your M&O rate, 1 year at $1.17, then back to the $1.04, and then compressing. Here is your 28.19, that's where we started, and we promised to keep that. We're keeping that, and you can see here that your INS fund balance, even with the issuance of the bonds, even with the early redemption of some of the other bonds, you still are increasing your INS fund balance. So, what number do we need in INS fund balance? It is not a set number. This number is available to us for multiple uses. It is an insurance policy, if you will. If we ever do get a surprise out of this number, it'll help us deal with that surprise. It will help us pay off bonds early. It will help us amortize new bonds early. And any other things that we may have. Occasionally a bond program can be performing well that it takes pressure off of other areas. Okay? So what number do we need here? 10 million is on the higher end of that, what we need. When we sell all of the bonds and you project your bond model forward, we're going to get to about $40 million of annual debt service payments in the INS fund. 10 million is 25% of that. When you hear the rule of thumbs about general operating fund, they want to hear about 25% of your operating budget or 3 months out of the 12 months of operating carryover fund balance. We don't really need 25% in the INS account, but this would be at that number. So our plan is to utilize this if we ever have any shocks to our system. If we need to modify this temporarily, whatever the case may be, that money is there and it's coming in. That's our estimate for August 31st of 2024. Y'all have heard it from me before. I probably sound like a broken record. But for bond payments, we measure you not on your fiscal year end of June 30. We measure you on the state's fiscal year end of August 31st because we collect taxes in January that's used to pay principal in February, interest in February, and then the second interest payment in August. So our true fund balance for INS purposes is measured on an 8/31 basis. So when you see a big number in your audit, just know that that number is fixing to go down immediately in 2 months or a month and a half. So it's not quite as big as it looks in an audit. So here's our profile, principal and interest. Again, this is where we're brought in the last bond. Here's our placeholder to bring in additional bonds. It's declining. We're all set for our next round of bond issuance. Again, I don't really need to wait for July certified value to proceed. I think you will be given some advantage by being not in a traffic jam, which comes when May elections occur. And when May elections occur, they get certified values in July and they sell bonds in August. So there is a big wave of bonds that come in that time frame. By selling in the spring, we can get the money. The other thing that we can do with that is we can invest it, right? So we can invest it pending the need to use it for construction and otherwise. We don't get to keep all of it. Every time we sell a bond, it will have an arbitrage yield that we can earn interest up to that. Anything over and above it, we must rebate to the federal government. But for example, your last bond was at like a 3.33% arbitrage yield. If you're earning 5%, then you get to keep about 3/5 of your interest earnings, and you have an accountant that performs that calculation for the district. So another reason why spring is actually advantageous for this district, I don't need to pay for that. Upcoming call dates. So right now, We do not have another early optional redemption on your agenda. We only have the authorization to proceed with the issuance of additional bonds. But I put this slide up here. We are always in the debt management mode. We're always looking at what bonds we might want to call in. Most of these bonds out here, when they start getting to the longer bonds, they're the 3% coupons. There's a couple of 5% in there that we may target at some point. We don't want to refinance this bond or pay it off early because it is the Build America bond. So the interest subsidy that comes in for the interest on these bonds doesn't have to go to the bonds where we don't need it. It can go to your general operating fund. So it's advantageous for us to leave this outstanding. And again, some of these bonds, we may come back to you at a certain date for early redemption. I don't have that on the agenda currently because right now I would rather accelerate the new bonds than pay off early some of these other bonds. This one that's callable August 24 is a small piece, very short piece at a 3% coupon. I'd rather sell your new bonds up sooner rather than call in that $1.7 million. So the summary of the plan of finance, again, $70 million as the second installment from Proposition A. We're likely to use a negotiated underwriting, the same method of sale that we used on the first series of bonds. The amortization length is 21 years. I think we started with 25, 24, 23, so we're actually, again, outperforming the distance or final maturity. Credit enhancement permanent school fund guarantee, interest rate assumption in this model is 4.75. We're selling bonds at less than that, so this is a very conservative model going into the sale. The baseline taxable value is $13.3 billion. We have that number. It's assumed to grow 1% for 4 years. It has always grown faster than that. And then again, we have some depreciation for the 313s. And to continue on with our conservatism, we take off $500 million because we never know when one of these institutions are going to have their own set of issues that somehow change their taxable value. So again, conservatism for the bond model is appropriate. Here's what it looks like graphically. I think I can call out most of these colors. They look a little different than they do. So this was our net outstanding debt service. In gold here was the $84 million that we issued. So here we took the outstanding, we brought it up, okay? We paid bonds off early here in orange, so that was additional principal retirement. And the green here is your increase to the INS fund balance, taking it up to that $10 million. So that's all the components of 23-24. The light blue here is the $70 million proposed structure of the debt service. So here's a pretty big payment. Again, early amortization. And then these bars here, leaving room for our third installment of the facility bonds, which is supposed to be in very light yellow. Looks different there. And then this little amount, and this little amount are those little tranches of technology bonds that we have a placeholder for. So you sell it 1 year, and 2 years later you sell one, then 2 years later you sell one, and you pay them off in 2-year increments. So at the end of the day, it's kind of a flat debt service with a big drop off and a big drop off. Again, small growth in our value, baseline, some depreciation. This, you can't really tell it from right there. It's actually slightly declining here as well along those lines. So 28.19 cents continues to be plenty sufficient to amortize our bonds. I don't have a plan built into fund balance increase here. Again, I'm selling blind into next year's taxable value. So these numbers will play out. We have plenty of fund balance if we have a smaller number. If you grow bigger, then there would be an orange block in there, etc. But I'm not worried about it when we're carrying $10 million. Any type of taxable value changes are going to be in the smaller amounts that we could utilize. Again, I'm not even predicting that you're going to need to utilize any. But that's our game plan for the light blue, with the ones above the light blue coming later. And again, the gold has been sold this last July. So any questions on the plan of finance for the light blue $70 million? When we sell this 70 million, it will leave you 69 million of Proposition A, 12 million of Proposition B, and of course we exhausted Proposition C with the first installment. And our schedule of events, we've been visiting on and off with the administration, of course. We set up this as a presentation for the Plan of Finance to give you a chance to digest the information before we ask you for formal approval of the order authorizing the issuance of the bonds and delegating authority to the administration to complete that sale of the 70 million. With that, April, we'll sell shortly thereafter. We'll close in mid-May. That's when the money will go into your construction fund, begin earning interest, be available for your summertime draws, etc. That is the end of my reports.
So Doug, you talked about how healthy all of this is for us, and we're certainly excited to hear that. Given the state of what's happening at the Fed, if they were to lower interest rates, will it have a positive bearing on this?
Not really. In fact, the market has already, as they call it, baked in some Federal Reserve changes in the short-term rate.
Gotcha.
So if you looked at the taxable treasury market, which is a little bit different than our tax-exempt municipal market. So our tax-exempt municipal market is relatively flat from a short-term, say, 3-year maturity to a 30th maturity. There is still, you get more return if you're willing to invest for 30 years than you do for 3, but it's not drastic. There have been times when we would have short-term rates at below 1% and long-term rates at 4%. So a big difference between 1 and 4. Now we're at 3 to 4. Okay? The federal treasury market has actually inverted. So a 6-month T-bill is paying a higher yield than a 10-year treasury. So one's at 5%, one's at 4, 4.5, 4.75. So it's actually inverted. If the Federal Reserve takes action to lower interest rates, it's a cut of that 5% to 4.75, and then a 4.75 to a 4.50. And these medium and long-term bond rates, we don't have an ability to predict how they're going to change. They're driven as much by economic activity as they are by institutional activity of the Federal Reserve. Said another way, if we continue to have a growing economy, our medium and long-term treasury rates are going to remain high. If we were to go into recession, it wouldn't matter what the Federal Reserve is doing, those rates would come down. So they're going to behave a little bit differently than what you read about in the news. Everyone is hoping for a Fed indication that inflation is stopping and slowing down. That indication gives positive vibes to the rest of the market. So if inflation is slowing down, then interest rates slow down because we have to get paid for the time of money over a 20-year period. And 20 years from now, the value of that money is going to be a little different than it is today if inflation is really high. So I would not predict a timetable based on Federal Reserve action. What I go by is what the reality is, and that we have had, I don't know if I can get it back on the screen, but if you go back to that first graph, we started the year above our averages. Yeah. We started out up here, and we since have been down here. And so we have a very, very sound functioning market. These are 25-year bond deposits. We're selling at 20 years, so ours is going to be a little different than this, obviously. It's an index. But I like where we are in our market today. This action here and then this action here, we don't have in our market right now. It's supply and demand, and there's a smaller amount of national tax-exempt bonds than there's been in quite a while because we only have really new money coming and not refunding so much. So,
Thanks.
any other questions on our proposed plan for the next installment? Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug. That's all great news.
good evening. So we just had great news with Devon and great news with Doug, and so we're going to walk through my presentation here. And please, as they said, if you have any questions as we go along, please ask. And George is going to take notes for me, so if you have questions, and we'll give you back that information as soon as possible. So, put a little. We'll try to make it a little fancy to bring something to it, right? Okay, so this is our current estimated 2024 budget. And, oh, here we go. Okay, so this is what was adopted. We adopted this last June at the tax rate of 1.1295 because, remember, last June, we didn't know what our MCR is. We didn't know what the state was going to do, what legislation was going to do. And because of what they did do, which was decrease with our Senate Bill 2 tax changes, where they compressed our MCR tax rate by 10 cents, and they also increased the homestead exemption by $100,000 to $100,000. So all the tax increases or the tax impacts to homeowners, it did affect us, but it kept us whatever we lost in tax revenue. We also lost in our recapture, almost. They said they were going to hold us harmless, but we still owe about $200,000 more. So then we also had in November, at the end of November, we found out that our revenue was going to decrease and decrease by every for every district. Some districts actually have to pay back money, but we just had the benefit of only going down by what we thought, what we asked for versus what we thought was about $1.8 million. So we budgeted $2.5 million, but we're only going to receive 1.8. So the net of that is we're decreasing our revenue by another $600,000. And also we had our property insurance, which y'all approved last March, and it went up $500,000 for that year. But because it's March through June, we have to kind of split out that cost. So in total, this is just as of right now, that's actually an extra $1 million that is added to our deficit. So right now, we're sitting at $9.6 million. This is not final by any means. This is very tentative because this is saying whatever we budgeted, we think we're going to spend all of that. We don't think we're going to spend all of that, but we don't know yet. In April, all the requisitions are going to cut off, so then we'll have a better idea of what our actual expenditures are going to be. We do preliminary estimates of where our payroll is going to end up. So after April, I'll be able to give you much better of where we stand. But I wanted to kind of show you just right now, like, because of these three things that happened, if everything is equal and nothing changes, our $8.6 million deficit that you adopted that last June is now actually 9.6 through no fault of our own.
So, and on March 1st, we adopted an amended budget. The deficit on that budget is 8.698, so 8.7 million.
Yes, sir.
Where does that extra $900 in the last 2 weeks? Where does that represent?
Well, the financial statements that you adopted was, and we haven't actually put this into our financial statements. Like, we're going to wait and see how it flows out before we actually give it to you on the financial statements in a budget amendment. At the end of June, we will ask you all to adopt a budget amendment that will bring everything in line. So, meaning it's going to, we'll put in where I'll actually decrease out your revenue amount by $22 million, and I'll decrease the recapture by $22 million. So we don't actually make those changes because everything is estimated until it's not. And we don't know that until June. So, and June is the last day, last month too, that's the end of the fiscal year, so that is the last that we can amend any kind of budget. So, and the financial statements that we ask for y'all to adopt every month is actually 2 months behind. So when y'all adopted in March, we were adopting January.
And that was based on when you changed our board meeting.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a great question. Is there anything else on this? Okay. So due to everything that we just saw in that that slide, those three things, the ABC that is affecting our budget, it's affecting every budget. So these are the different things that are impacting our surrounding districts, including ourselves. So 95% expected in 2024 with a deficit budget, 100% plan to have a deficit budget, adopt a deficit budget for 2025. Partly because, number one, they have to, because everyone is in the same boat, but also to send a notice to the state saying, because they think we don't need this money. So if we adopt a balanced budget or a budget that's not a deficit, it's showing, it's proving them right, where it's not. We are all in the same boat here. Districts surrounding us are discussing a 1 to 2% payroll increase, and whatever they do for payroll increase is going to be pulled from their fund balance. So it might be a raise, it might be a stipend, but they're just discussing that right now. I actually have a meeting on Thursday with our surrounding district CFOs, and that's going to be the topic of conversation. Some districts are closing campuses due to low enrollment and costs associated with the maintaining buildings. Some are discussing reductions in force or hiring freezes for the next year. Some are discussing eliminating or reducing programs and cutting and also consolidating different positions. So it's bleak, but we're all in it together. So as we go through, we're going to discuss the following topics. We're going to compare our M&O rate to our surrounding districts. We're also going to discuss fixed and variable expenditures and kind of explain what those are and where we have mobility to make changes. We're going to look forward to our fiscal year 2025 with the additional costs that we know are going to happen, and then also giving you a very preliminary estimated budget that is, I don't believe it's going to be this, but I'm just going to throw it out there, okay? So this is all of our surrounding districts, and as Danny said earlier, what he had provided in our closed session was that we had the second lowest tax rate. This is only looking at M&O, but he had his INS, so that's why we're fourth. So for our maintenance and operations, it's built of the following. So everyone has a maximum compressed rate, and it's depending upon what our valuation is, and then also what our enrollments are. So that's how your MCR rate is. So you can see everyone's is different, or some are the same depending on what their valuations are, and it's a very complicated formula to try to figure out how they come up with that. But the state gives us this. Then the board approved. We all have those 5 cents that the state says if your board says you can have it, you can have it. We all have that. Then we have pennies that we can get only through an election. So you have 3 cents that are golden pennies. So that means we get to keep everything. They're not subject to recapture. If you go down, the ones that are red, they've all had a Vader, and they've asked for those 3 pennies. Okay? There's only 5 districts in our surrounding area that have not had Vader. These 5 right here. Then we have, out of the Vader, you can also ask for not just the 3 pennies, you can also ask up to 12 pennies. So, but 9 of those are called your copper pennies, and those are subject to recapture. So if you can go down, you don't have to ask for it. So Fort Bend just asked for 2, but the other ones that did, they asked for the whole 9. So that's how many have the additional pennies. And then back in 1950s time frame, there was a law that was passed that said, okay, you districts that are in the Harris County area can ask for these pennies, and they get to keep them when they're grandfathered in. So only the ones in blue here have those pennies. So when you add up all of these components, that's what gives you your total M&O amount. So as you can see, Joe Park has the highest M&O rate because they have all of these pennies. And you can see there's different amounts for each one, and it was again dependent on that law back in the 1950s. Is there any questions on this? Okay. This is the same information, but just in a graphical view. So you can see here we are right here. So we have everyone has that blue that has an MCR. Everyone has the orange, brownish color as for those 5 cents that the board approved. Then you can kind of visually see who has what and who has all 5 components. So let's discuss what a fixed rate is versus a variable rate. Fixed rate are these right here. So these are things that we have to pay no matter what. These are automatically coming off the top, and the amount they are is what they are. There's nothing we can do to really change these amounts. So we have to pay our recapture, we have to pay our utilities, our tax collection, our security, our fuel. And so total fixed costs are $66 million of our budget. Out of that, 81% of it is your recapture. Then we have variable. These are the type of expenditures that we can make decisions about to decide, okay, what can we do, what can we change? So that's your payroll, your supplies, your contract services, and travel, and different things like that. So as you can see, payroll and benefits. And again, this is for last year because I want to give you a clearer picture of how things fell out since last year was completely closed out. So that is about 94% is your payroll and benefits out of your total variable costs.
And I know the board is looking at the same thing we're all looking at, but most of those have a 0 in front of them, meaning they're very, very small.
Yes.
You know, even the 1.6 and 1.9. I mean, everything that we do in the school district under that total variable is payroll and benefits, you know. And so that's that, and us growing our numbers, our student numbers. And y'all heard me talk about that for the past 4 years I've been here. How do we grow our numbers? How do we get more kids enrolled in the school district? How do we hold on to more kids? That's the way that's going to happen. Stacy showed a couple slides back that was showing all of the districts, but most of those districts, and I won't call their names out because we're in a public meeting, but most of those districts are what the state considers fast growth districts. And so when you see some of those school districts with those higher M&O rates and those kind of things, it's all really based upon, board, the fact that they're growing 500, 750, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 students a year. Porte ISD is growing 1,500, 2,000 kids a year. And so naturally, they don't have to do the same things to burden taxpayers because the number of students that are coming will offset all of that for them. So when we say that there's no apples to apples in this business of school finance, there really isn't any apples to apples. Every school district has its own fingerprint. And I know y'all know that, but I just wanted to bring that out one more time. 70% is payroll and benefits, and then those other ones, if you add them all up together, they don't even equal 5%. And so the biggest bang for our buck is going to be how do we maximize our payroll and benefits area, which is staff.
On the 3 terms of cost or expenditure, how much can we qualify back each year?
Well, we have to pay out 4.7, but we get back 1.5. 1.5. So
we got to pay it out first, and then
we got to pay it out, and then we get a little bit back.
You get a little bit back.
So we get all that back over a history? So like eventually we get it all back, or we only get like a third?
Has that happened, George?
But
But is it all of that?
No, it's not.
We-
It's a percentage of it.
It's a contract that the district,
And that goes up on your 29, right?
I believe so. We can find out. We can
Yeah.
track it down. I'll
I
find
think
out.
that ends at 29.
And then like the other question this is kind of new, like this seems like a high number on the tax collection. And that might be a good number, but like, is that something that we can ever bid out if we wanted to? Not saying
Well,
can,
we use Goose Creek as our tax appraiser, our tax collector, and the other option really is Harris County. Those are the two biggest ones, as Harris County, in Harris County.
Is it a flat fee, or how do like,
It
this
is, it is a flat fee, and we pay out quarterly. And so, and it's been about that amount for the past 5, 6, 7 years. Yeah, so that is, it's, 1.3 million. Any other questions on this? So these are additional costs that we can look forward to in 2025. As you know, we've spoken to about many times, the ESSER funds are $3 million that we have for this year that we're spending, and that's going away. And that's our interventionists, our library positions, we pay for summer school payroll for that, and then we also use a portion of it for property insurance. So all of those we're absorbing back into the general fund. So it's $3 million going back to general fund. 1.25 million is what we lost in shared revenue. We have, as a side note to that, we have done formal, what is it called? Formal, an informal decline. What was it called? Review. And we're waiting to hear back.
Up in the air whether or not we'll get any of that back.
It is up in the air, like absolutely. We have no
The good thing is there's a class action going on. I can't say lawsuit because it's not a lawsuit, it's their money. But all of the school districts in the state are asking for
Yes.
them to do that back. So we might get lucky on that.
We might get it, and the thing is that the state actually has the money to cover this claim, and we've been heading into it, and, yeah. So, 1.25 million of revenue that we know, that we are pretty confident we're gonna lose. Our property insurance costs, it did increase by $500,000 this past year. And then our SRO costs, this year currently is the first year that we'll have an entire year of SRO costs because we started doing it in the 23 fiscal year. So we estimate it to also continue to grow because it's a needed and a valued. Yes, sir.
I want to speak on that. Yes, it's outrageous, but we're hoping the state is looking at the second cycle of grant funds. And we are in compliance as a district, so there's additional parameters that allow us possibly to pay for SRO costs.
Oh, wonderful.
That's not 100%, that would be huge for us.
That would be huge.
Whatever it is, it comes off of
It
that.
would come off of that, yes, sir.
Well, when the stadium's done, we're gonna have that for our insurance policy, right? So it's gonna go up at the time of the
We will add
When
to
is our
that.
builder's wish?
We will, yes, sir.
That's the two, like, so I know we paid our recapture, cost in full, but we $51 million. And then last year, we were able to get, I guess, surprisingly, a $5 million rebate.
We got about 3 million back, but it ended up being total as well.
So how does that happen, and like, is there a chance that could happen in the future?
So that happened because we had a company do a property value protest against our 2019 valuations, and they won. And so our values came down, which meant our recapture payment went down, and which means also that the state actually owed us a little bit of money. So that's where that 5 million came from. At this point, there's the Purdue Brandon is our firm that does that. They're looking for us to see if there's any kind of property valuation issues, but they did 2019, they didn't have an issue with 2020, they haven't really had an issue with 2021, so they go year by year, and it takes time. So right now, there's nothing on the table for that, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be.
So we won't see the benefit of the new tax rate, the reduced tax rate until next year.
When you say reduced tax rate
Well, like, we lowered the tax rate, what, 22 cents?
for,
Or what, from last year?
Yes, okay.
And so that reduces our recapture rate, right? So
Right, so our recapture rate this year is going to be, it's much lower.
Right, so for next year, like, there's 25.
Well, when we make the payment this June, we're going to pay the lower rate. So we're estimating, but yes, there's many things that are going to change. As Mr. Harris said, you know, insurance is probably going to go up a little bit more. We have some ideas to lower that, so you know, we're going to talk to.
I'm a little confused, okay.
Uh-huh.
You're paying that, you said less amount of recapture in June, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, that counted in the account when you say a $9.6 million projected deficit
Yes.
for 2014. You're already discounting that you're already getting a lower recapture?
Wait, say that again?
The adjustments to recaptures are already been made in that deficit, so it's reflective of that, so it won't go down.
So I reduced my revenue, but it also reduced my recapture. So in total, but it was not apples to apples, so we still owe.
So you're already discounting that?
I've already
and then-
discounted that.
And then you're still getting a $9.6 million deficit?
Yes, sir.
So next year.
Remember, these are our estimates.
These are our estimates that we're using summary of finance templates to calculate out.
Oh, I do want to make a comment on what it said.
Right here?
No, actually, back when all the different school districts,
One more?
yeah, it's the one with the actual numbers.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. I'm gonna go up to and say, I mean, this was told to me, I don't know if it's accurate or not, and I really don't care, but, the reason why I heard these districts didn't, or whatever, was because whenever, they were promised by the legislature that if you lowered your grade or didn't increase it, we'll supplement the lost income. That should be a history point for everybody, that don't rely on the legislature to fulfill its promises, so, but, anyway, that's it. No, but, yeah.
Okay, so, what I did on this slide, this is, again, very estimated budget, preliminary, this is just taking everything that we have right now that I showed you on that first slide, where it went across, where I showed you it was 9.6 million as of right now. That will again change after we close out the year, and we know what actually we spent versus how much we're actually getting. But when you add in all of those pieces, that $5 million here, it ends up being.
I think we should pray again. Never bow your head.
Okay, so, again, this is not what we expected to be, but we wanted to give you all the information of where we stand next year.
So let me stop you for just for a second, Stacy. Thank you for that, and we're gonna continue having this conversation. Our job is to just share with you what we have, okay? Nothing is set in stone, and I know that frustrates the bejeebers out of all of us, that it's not set in stone. But this is March.
Yes.
We will continue having conversations because you, the board, will give me direction on what it is that you would like for me to explore. Because you, the board, can say, Walter Jackson, we want you to go now and look at how can we become more efficient in this area or this area. And I'm not recommending that to you. I'm telling you that's what you can do so that when we come back, hopefully that number does not look like that. Okay? This is the reality of every school district around us and really in the great state, all right? Because of some issues, I don't want to go into that. We already know why we're in some of those issues. But she's sharing these things, and it's my job to kind of take the responsibility of, you have the right to talk to me about what it is that you want me to start exploring and doing, okay? Without hurting people and hurting programs and hurting kids, ultimately, hurting our student programming. But she just shared in a couple slides earlier some of the many things that districts are doing to offset theirs. This looks like a big number, but not some of our neighbors who's got a $39 million deficit, right? Right? Now, it's all relative because this is our $39 million one for as small as we are. Does that make sense? So I'm just saying that to say, I don't, for once, I'm not standing here saying the sky's falling because we've got some options, right? Now, they're not easy options, but we've got some options. And so that's why you have an administration to look at these things. And so we'll continue to be as efficient as we can, and as we learn things and as we do things, we'll bring them to you. All right?
I'm just curious, you got this project, you got ending balance now about 9.5 million under your 150 days of fund balance. Let's say you, during that fiscal year, you get a storm like Hurricane Ike coming in, because now you're having to spend more money to take care of issues that you may not get insurance to pay back for their lifetime, 6 months. So I'm just curious, because this was before I got on the board, how much of an impact that if you had an Ike-like storm come through, how much of an impact on your fund balance would that have in addition to what you got right there?
It all depends. It all depends on what buildings go down and what buildings we can't pick back up, immediately. It all really depends.
It will impact it, but as Dr. Jackson said, we don't know how much. And,
And even with for the time period that was, the cost of everything back then is different than it is now, so it's all.
It's gonna be more.
relative. Yeah, so it's all relative to what happens now, so.
when we do have our next workshop, we will have more accurate numbers on, because it'll be after April. We will have what our true costs are gonna be for the year, what our best estimates of what. So, I don't expect it to look like this, but I just wanna say, okay, we kept everything equal as of what we know
This is
right
right, yeah.
now. This is right now, with no salary increase for next year, with just how things are, with the tax rate that we have, this is what it could look like. Doesn't mean it's gonna be. Time will tell. Are there any questions on this one?
I had this is not a really ridiculous question for me, but in a training we were at a couple weeks ago, there were two different TASB representatives. So the TASB people that are leading these classes, they made the comment on two separate instances where districts across the state are basically incentivized, or the first one said it'd be foolish for districts to show a positive gain, like a net profit in this year, because, I guess the logic was because the state, they're trying to lobby the state to give us more funds to do these things, so like, it's almost like, again, it's counterintuitive and ridiculous, but the districts are now going out there and taking a loss this year, because the long game is, they think we'll get more money from the state.
Well, Jeff, I can tell you, we are not taking a loss.
We have to take a loss.
No, we're not taking a loss for play, is what I'm
it's
saying.
not a play, yeah.
This is real numbers
Yes.
for what we have right now. I get what you're saying, because I've heard the same thing. I've heard the same thing. Because there are some districts with very large student populations that are sitting on a $500 million fund balance. And so there's been legislators that have said publicly, let them use their fund balances. All right, that's not us. And that's not really the normal school district. I can tell you 10 school districts off the top of my head that do not have a fund balance at all. Right now in this area, all right? And so there may be some of those things going on, but these for us are real numbers if things stay exactly like they are. Now, we know that they're going to shift a little bit, and we're saying that up front. And we're working some things. Every district does this. Every district does this. There is a time in the school year where the CFO or the superintendent or somebody, and I generally send out an edict and say, okay, in April 15th, if you haven't bought yada, yada, yada for the 23-24 school year by April 30th, the money was budgeted for this school year, so it's probably not going to be used on kids this school year if you haven't spent that. So we encumber some of those things that help this, but I can promise you it won't take that down half. You know, it won't take it down even one.
To your point, I agree with everything that you just said. Thank you. But I have not heard from all the other CFOs that I'm talking to in our surrounding districts or anything. They are like pulling their hair out. They're trying to figure it out because no one wants to be in this situation. And this, my opinion is the state is forcing us to do it. It's not that we don't want it. You know, if I could give you a balanced budget, I would, and I would, it would make my heart just so full. I could do that for you. And that's how they all feel too. But I do agree that the state, and that's kind of what I said in one of the earlier slides, is that we're all going to have a negative balance. They all expect to adopt a deficit balance, and they all really expect to end this year with a deficit balance.
Which this is not new for us, because I mean, I've got this is my third budget cycle, this is report. Like, we had a deficit budget cycle.
No, it's going back over a decade, like every year we've adopted multi-million-dollar deficit budgets, but every single year we put multi-million dollars back to the account.
Because you had some things in place to take care of that, like disaster rate.
You have the 313 agreement that you don't have the, you have the disaster rate for 4 years.
You know what I mean, we have the disregard of the way, so if we add that to what our typical deficit is, or what our typical budget.
And the game has changed drastically.
When we come out to the our own deficit, then we're.
Well, and then we used to get this much, and now our maximum compressed
I was getting ready to say, the game changed in November, ladies and gentlemen, when everybody got the $100,000 homestead exemption and the tax rate. It just changed how much money we got coming in. It changed for us. The rules of the game have changed drastically.
They're at war. That's why I feel. Their gloves are up, they're ready to go.
Whatever the rules were 3 or 4 years ago, it's not the same. The disaster rate is not in play. You know, again, you don't have a.
They changed the 313 agreement?
Well, all of those things, they're sunset now. And so, here's where we are, and you have my word and my commitment, and of course Stacy's, and our entire administrative teams, that we're gonna do everything in our power to do what we can to winnow those numbers down. So it's not that. I'd rather you say, well, I thought it was gonna be 14 point, whatever. I'd rather you chide me about that in a couple of months,
Right.
and we were dead wrong, than that number be the number that we have to go to the bank with. Because that is not something that is something we can sustain. It's not sustainable.
Okay, I'm not going on record saying I support this, I'm just asking just to play with numbers. But I've heard from some teachers and things like that about, you know, this thing about making the news about 4 days work week. Where, how much, have you seen anything on the districts that have passed or are doing a 4-day work week on any kind of savings in terms of their operations going to a 4-day as opposed to a 5-day?
I read today in Texas ISD, I think you probably saw the same article, Jasper ISD is going back to a 5-day because they did not see any benefit of it. Here's the deal, and I cannot speak for them because I'm not running a district with a 4-day. But from what I hear, if the kids are not there and that building is open and that AC is on, you did not save a whole lot of energy, right? If that building is open and the AC has to be on so that the mold doesn't tear up the place, right? You send the kids home and the teachers home, but you're spending all your district money to keep a building open because you got to have it ready now for Monday.
Right.
And the 4-day work week is, as you can attest to, I mean, you know, it's what starts in October and ends in April, so it's only for a quick period of time. It's not for.
I don't think it was designed for cost savings. I think it was designed for mental health.
Crosby's doing?
I don't personally know. I mean, I've heard some things, but I don't know personally, you know, if that's even true what I've heard.
I know we focus a lot, understandably, on expense, and it's, the situation we're in. Can we talk a little bit about, like, our, maybe alternative funding? I know that if all things are the same, the way we get more revenue is by having more students. And so, can we talk about what we're doing to work towards that, A, and then B, I mentioned, I think, last meeting, like grant writing, and I know you said like how we do it, but like, do we have numbers associated, and have we talked to other districts to see like how we compare respectively to other districts in terms of like the dollar amount they're getting in federal grants? Is that an opportunity that we can explore further?
It is.
What are we doing, like, what are some other opportunities for us to get?
Well, with all due respect, you've heard me for 4 years talk about how are we trying to build and grow our enrollment. That's all I talk about in my ad team meetings. When I bring my principals together, that's all we do. So Dr. Bromley and Rebecca Brown and the team put together a program. Talk about this attendance program that we brought in, trying to make sure kids, because even if our attendance rates goes up 1 percentage point, we get so many more millions of dollars.
You can tell just by looking at Facebook, like, my kid was only gone 1 day and we got a letter in the mail. So, I mean, we know
So
that
we're
it's
doing
working.
some of those things.
Yeah.
It's working, but at the end of the day, you know, one of the things that we're trying to do is increase our brand. Your branding makes people decide if they want to come to this school district and live in this town and bring their kids here. We're an open enrollment school district. We have some kids that are open enrollment, but we also have kids that go to other districts that are open enrollment.
Currently today, I had them run the open enrollment. We have 355 kids. They come to LaPorte from other districts, so we, you know, for our open enrollment.
I'd love for you to eventually put a dollar amount on ADA for 350 kids, because that, we couldn't do without that 350 kids right now. That number would be different.
And it raised from last year, it was like 260 last year. Now it's 350.
Yeah, I'm sure like more than 300 kids or 500 kids, what does that translate to dollars?
Yeah, we can get y'all some of
But
that.
you also, you are going to have increased costs though associated with that.
You
will need
will.
more physicians to cover
It
those.
will.
It's not going to be pure.
It's not pure
No.
profit or anything
You're
like
right.
that, you know. It's,
But we have the room to grow.
Right.
And we have the room in our classrooms.
But branding is one, Jeff, talking about it, everything that we're doing on social media and all of our social media outlets with Adam and all of the different groups that we have, even with, you know, the sports and all of those things, that stuff matters. People they'll take a look at what are we doing, you know what I mean, and why are people talking about this place? HEB, I mean, those are things that puts us on the map, so to speak. And it validates the fact that we are a good school district. So In time, these things will happen, but let's just face it, at LaPorte High, and I've looked at the old AEIS reports, I'm talking about 15 years ago, 16 years ago. When I first got the job, I looked at the AEIS reports to see what the highest enrollment was. At your absolute high enrollment, you were about 8,300 students. And I'm talking about when you were a 6A school district, prior to any of the storms that ever happened in this town, we had 8,300 students. And over time, the storms happened and washed away entire neighborhoods. Y'all know that better than I do.
It was 7,800.
8,200, one of them on one of your AIS
Way
reports.
back before,
But maybe it was past
Yeah.
16 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Yeah.
but still, that's a significant amount of kids compared to 7,100 kids, 7,200. But we're still dealing with the after effects of that thing that I don't even want to talk about. But we're trying to bounce back from some of those things. And the way you do that is with all of these kids' faces and names all over the place, and parents knowing and feeling like their kids belong here. We're exploring all of those things because the biggest bang for us right now is for 500 kids to move into this town. And I hear, because I'm sitting on many of the same boards you guys sit on, we don't have the space for another 500 families to move into this town, right? And so we just have to figure out how do we grow our enrollment and how do we keep our enrollment. And that's just as equally important. And so we'll look at grants and all of that. The last thing I'll say about grants is this, and I'm glad you brought up grants, because Dr. Brown is taking the entire district right now through the teacher incentive allotment. And so all over the state now, you're beginning to hear people talk about they're going to get a payout. So guess what? In another year and a half or so, our teachers are going to be readily available to accept $15,000, $20,000 stipends for their master teaching in this district. We're there. We're doing that right now. We're going through this process. To me, those are some things that teachers are going to hang around for because they know that they will have an opportunity to take advantage of those kinds of
And
things.
that's a 5-year, once they gain that recognition, they get that money for 5 years. So no matter, even if their observation year 2 goes down, they still earn that 5-year recognition in the TIA.
And that's something about the state.
That's already by the state.
No, every year. We don't pick that up. That's the state stipend. Yeah. That program is so enticing right now. Leaders are deciding they would rather go back in the classroom and take advantage of that. And who could blame them? Who could blame a teacher leader for doing that?
One of the things
Right.
we learned with funding, with even, the state not giving the districts the money they need, one thing that they promote throughout TASA and all the conferences is TIA. So they have said the TIA money will never run out. So they have a lot of that in the state for TIA because they want to ensure teacher retention and promote teacher success.
And hold on to the absolute best teachers. That's the goal. And so we're excited about that. We're a district that we're going through TIA, and we didn't add any additional staff to do that. I mean, most places are adding an entire office of people. Dr. Brown and her curriculum team and these folks over here at this table are doing all of that themselves because we didn't add anybody to do it. I mean, this lady's driving to Austin once a week or San Antonio, wherever you're going, to hear those things. But we feel good about that, and we want that to happen for this district. But we kept kicking the can down the road because we know we didn't have the true staffing to pull that off. And so we just said, look, let's do it. And so we're very excited about that. And I think our staff is going to benefit greatly from that.
That's an amazing thing, and I think it's going to tremendous fruit for us. But I'm more interested in grants that cover costs that are current. That's a new thing that's going to be covered by the state.
Right.
I'm talking about alternatives. Like, let's go to security right on campus.
Right.
The officers we have. Maybe there's a grant out there for that, maybe there's not. But is it possible if we were to have, let's just say we have a plan that out of generosity of their heart wants to give us $750,000 a year to help pay for all security guards? Is that something we can legally accept?
Yes.
How does that work?
Get me a lunch with them.
So that's what I'm talking about. I mean, we live in a town, we complain about the recapture itself,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it doesn't.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of opportunities that other towns don't.
As a board, you can accept funding through an action item on your agenda. As a board, you can do that. We just need to have conversations and dialogue with some folks. And again, you have to let me know what you're comfortable with. I don't want to be taking people's tax dollars and then I'm out there begging for people to give us money, because it may make us look like, you know, their tax dollars is not enough. So, but I think there's another way to do that. And if y'all can help us with those things, and we're willing to do that as well.
Like naming rights, we talked about this,
Yes.
we get naming rights, like saying, hypothetical. So it was $5 million naming rights for our new stadium. Is that something we look towards, any kind of expense? Or-
Once it goes into the general fund, we use that as the board sees fit.
As long as they don't put stipulations for it.
Yeah. Well, but we control that, because if they really want their name on our facility, then we control the rules. They're not gonna do that unless we feel good about that. But we're open to those kinds of things, by the way.
You know, and
Texas Pro State.
Texas Stressville, yeah. Texas Stressville at Bulldog Stadium, there you
Look
go.
at Jeff for doing his part to add the population report, which that makes change
No.
life, baby.
you know, at the initial part of this, you talked about fixed costs and variable costs, and I think that we really need to accept and understand that there's a lot of fixed costs that we have no control over, and we need to focus our energy and our intentions on the part that we can. And we can all, you know, we have theory about the enrollment, all these things, those are fantastic and those have to happen, but we've got to look at the hard numbers, and we don't get, you know, we don't reap the rewards of theory. It's reality, and we've got to look at it. And right now, you've got teachers that are listening right now, wondering what their fates are. And what we've got to do is make sure that they understand we're going to go in turn, leave no stone unturned, looking for every nickel and dime we can to make sure that every teacher has employment with us moving forward, and that we're moving forward to continue to try to grow our footprint and do those things. But we really have to circle the wagon, so to speak, and focus on the part that we can control, because whether we like it or not, those are the cards we've been dealt. Until someone else intervenes otherwise, that's a real likely number. You know, looking at a double-digit deficit that's our reality. And until we can sit here and concrete start chipping it away, that's the facts that we need to make our decisions on, is based on those assumptions, in my opinion.
And your biggest is going to be that payroll benefits, that's where you're going to have, you're going to try to match your revenue to get your deficit down. That's where your biggest is going to be coming from, right there.
So, I mean, I definitely don't want to sound preachy. I appreciate all the preparation, and we've got a lot of work to do. But I do know that we have a large number of our stakeholders that listen to these, and I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression like that's what's being discussed here. We are trying to be proactive.
Yes.
These are things that haven't happened yet that we are trying to get ahead of to prevent those things from happening. And that's what I want to make sure is established, and that is the message that gets out.
Thank you, Mr. President. Listen, the budget cycle is a process.
Yes, absolutely.
And we start early having conversations about it. And the conversation shifts, and I know we sometimes get, you know, God, y'all gave us the numbers last year, and then next week it's different. Because it shifts. There's nothing that remains static in this business. And so every time we come, it'll shift a little bit. And I hope that it'll shift downward, right? And so it's a process. It's going to take time. And the people in this room that are part of the administration, we're all working, and our principals and everybody else, to do the absolute best we can. Yes, sir.
I would like to find out if you can get numbers back. I'd like to know, based on our current formula, how many additional students would it take to wipe away $4.6 million deficit? Okay, I'd like to know exactly.
Yeah, and Jeff kind of asked that same thing about, you know, what would 350 kids do for us? And so I think if you could show what 350 does, what 500 does, what 700, and then, you know, move it
Where are
up.
those kids? Now that 146 is done.
I know, right?
That south area right there, that's kind of a no man's land.
It
We
could
can
happen.
start having a parade down there.
You know, one thing,
146 in Red Bluff and a little further.
one thing, Jeff, I got my hand slapped by my colleagues, because when we first started sending out the magazine to brag about our school district, Adam and I kind of went a little further out than our boundaries.
Good job.
And boy, and they all called me and personally and was not happy.
If other schools can
Hey,
spend
we're
a lot of
gonna
money on billboards.
We're still wrapping everybody's car. We're gonna wrap everybody, put a wrap, help.
So we're working on it. We are working on these things, yes,
I
sir.
mean, at least while we can, right, it's not sustainable, but like, if we're the lowest tax rate, if everybody's doing their part, we're much lower than their part, like, to incentivize them to move here to the port, we have neighborhoods, we have different things, people had
Absolutely.
that maybe they'd be more likely to come here if they understand the tax rate before, maybe they're not.
Okay, we gotta work on that. Okay.
And that's a good point, I mean, with the renovations the city's doing, I think with the Silver Beach and the different things that are happening, I mean, it's only good stuff.
And just the branding of our school district. It's our job to brand and brag about our school district. And that's how people want to come, you know? Any other questions for us, Mr. President, board members?
I believe so. Everybody good? Yes, we're good?
Oh, yeah, next slide.
Okay, so this is just, you know, what we've been talking about and what Mr. Hanks so eloquently said is, you know, we're trying to get ahead of it. You know, our expenditures are overflowing our revenues, so we are trying to make the difficult decisions and finding ways to move forward because we want to balance that bucket, as is every district. So here's our next step. So for 2024, in April, we'll receive our certified estimated property values. We'll pay our recapture in June. And we are currently reviewing all of our staffing and cost efficiencies and all of that kind of stuff. This year, 25, we're going to have a workshop in May. We will adopt our budget and comp plan in June and adopt our tax rate in September, or if the board would like, we could do it later in November. And just as a reminder, our 89th legislative session is starts in January of 25 and it goes for 6 months through June. So we don't anticipate any school funding changes until the end of the 89th. So that will be June 2025. So another year and a half. Are there any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
I think it was a healthy discussion. Obviously, there's more questions than answers, and a lot of that is going to be contingent on the state getting us some more information. But we definitely have a lot to discuss. So I am going to request, that workshop. I know we're having one in May. We may need to look at our calendars for another supplemental workshop as well. I just want to make sure it gets right. I do want to re-emphasize the point just made to all our stakeholders, especially our staff, that we are mindful. You're at the forefront of every decision we make, and we want to make sure that we get this right. And this is being very, very proactive in us trying to head this off to prevent it from being the ugly number that we saw tonight. So with that said, we will adjourn this meeting at